So, we're jumping right in. We're not wasting any time on this Corvette. Jump right in, get our hands dirty, get it done so I've got something to drive while the never-ending S10 project slowly collects more parts. So first things first, we got to yank this old Crossfire engine right out of here, and I believe we're going to replace it with a 6-liter from a Silverado or something like that. Now, of course, to do that, we'll have to have a transmission that can support the power, and this 1984 700R4 transmission simply will not do. So I believe what we're going to do is go with the 4L80E and switch it to a manual valve body so that I can shift it. First I wanted to get a manual and, you know, shift it like a real boy, but a T56 swap in one of these is incredibly expensive, and so we will not be going that route. So I've settled for a 4L80, which is a lot cheaper, and just put a manual valve body in it, and we'll go from there. Now, of course, if you have a manual valve body, you have to have a sick nasty shifter to match the sick nastiness of the manual valve body. So I've got this here B&M Pro Ratchet extreme overkill shifter for what we're doing here. So first things first, we got to tear out the C-beam, the drive shaft, and the transmission. And we've got to do all that so that we can get at the bottom of this here shifter area, which I already removed, and bolt down the ratchet shifter. It's just a lot easier to do all this wiring and cables and bolts when the transmission is out of the way. And since it's got to change anyway, might as well just pull it. Now, for those of you that don't know, C4 Corvettes had this goofy C-beam thing, kind of like a torque arm, I guess, that bolted between the transmission and the differential, and basically it was in lieu of a cross member, and I suppose it helps you maintain your drive shaft angle or whatever, but what it really does is just cause an enormous pain in the butt when you have to remove it or change differential, change U-joints, change transmission, any of that. It just makes a huge pain, especially for individuals with larger hands. But I did you all a favor and I got it unbolted. Anywho, there's the drive shaft sitting over there in the corner. So next step is to pull the transmission. So I got the transmission out. Well, I got the transmission loose and it's currently sitting directly beneath the car, but I got too excited to start installing this bad boy right here, and so we're gonna start working on that next. My plan is to put it right about there where the old shifter was. It's in a pretty good spot. Now, the old shifter pattern bolts are very close to this shifter, but just a little off. And also, the way it sits now, it would be just slightly too low to be able to hit the reverse switch here to unlock reverse. So I've found this here plate of aluminum, and I'm going to cut some spacers out of it, and that will I'll bolt that into these spots, and that'll allow me to adapt this guy to sit right on those spacers. So let's get to cutting. Oh, would you look at that? They just magically fell out of the air. Well, let's get it bolted in and see what it looks like. Bada bing, bada boom. Just like that, she is installed, or installed enough at least. You got your little reverse switch here you gotta press, and then you put her in park, and then you pull her all the way back to 1, and then 2, 3, 4, neutral. There will be a converter lockup somewhere in this mess. Now, I happen to get the one with the 2 buttons just because I thought the buttons looked neat, and I figured I'd come up with what to do with them later. So anybody with ideas for the buttons, put some comments in the comment section. No, it will not be nitrous, but that would be pretty cool. But if you have any ideas other than nitrous, let me know. Next step then is to get the transmission pulled. Let's get under here and take a look at it. Well, there appears to be no transmission in there. I guess next up is the engine. Someone's already unbolted everything and it's ready to come out. Well, someone has magically, off camera, done all this work for me. And there we have it. The engine has been removed out of the old C4 Corvette. Next on the list of things to do is to separate the two harnesses electrically, the chassis harness and the engine harness. The chassis harness is going to have everything when we're talking about lights, brake lights, and all the other stuff that's on the chassis and not the engine. And then the other harness that we'll have to work on later, of course, the engine harness. And that will have all the sensors, the starter wires, the ECU wires, and that is going to be standalone. And I believe we're going with a Hollley Terminator X, just like we did on the old S10, which is covered up. You can't see it at all. So as you can see, as I tore the engine out, I shed some unneeded garbage onto the floor there. And so now I got to sort through the rest of this mess, do some wizardry on it, and see where we go from there. Well, I suppose it's high time I told you what the heck the plan was for the old Corvette. As you can see, in a matter of minutes, I've been able to completely make a mess of the harness. And if you look over here, you can see there's some brand new shiny harness, courtesy of Holley. If you want to sponsor me, that'd be great, Holley. This is another one of their Terminator X systems. Super easy to work with, super easy to set up. The second I knew I wasn't going to end up using the factory ECM for the LS motor, I knew exactly what I was going to use. Speaking of the LS, here she is, a nice and shiny 6-liter LQ4. Quick rundown of the changes I've made to it. Basically, changing as little as possible to make this work. Got an LS6 intake so that it will fit underneath the hood. I forget what Camaro it's off of, but I will post it somewhere on here. A water pump off a special Camaro. The only reason for that is that it's got the truck stick out here on the pulley so that I don't have to change this bad boy right here. And also it matches with my ICT billet alternator and power steering bracket. Now this mount moves these accessories more sideways and up than it does down and up, so that again you can close the hood. I also had to change the oil pan, and again it is escaping me what this oil pan is off of, but that is so that this front cross member on the Corvette can fit right in this gap here, and it's also a little higher profile than the truck oil pan so that I won't be dumping any oil on the highway if I hit a pothole. I'm going to be using the standard LQ4 flex plate. Now if you go to a Turbo 400 or Turbo 350, you need a little adapter in here so that it'll fit up right with the torque converter. In this application I will not need it, because what I'm going to be using is a 2-wheel drive 4L80. The reason for the 4L80 as opposed to a Turbo 400 is so that I've got overdrive and lockup from the factory. Very convenient and a lot cheaper than making a Turbo 400 that does that. I did a couple more things while you were looking away. I built this little switch panel here. That'll be my ignition switch panel, and then some of the accessories, line lock, anything like that. And then we've got the fuel pump mounted in one of the air vents. Won't be needing those where we're going. And then I've got my Terminator X 3.5-inch touchscreen mounted right in the middle there. Of course, I would like to keep the dash, and maybe someday I will go back to the 84. But for now, that 3.5-inch screen and the HUD up there, that'll work real nice. What I may end up doing, DeBoss Garage has done this a few times on his channel, if you want to check out what I'm talking about. But you take the 17-inch, the long Holley digital dash, and you would fit it behind this factory dash panel that comes with the Corvette. Then you can move the gauges around so that they'll fit and they'll look stock, but you'll have a touchscreen Holley niceness in your retro vet. The only reason I'm not doing that right now is because, well, I think you get the idea. Other than that, I would love to keep this good old JVC goodness right here, but I don't think it's going to do the trick because it does not have an aux cord. And for us young guns, an aux cord is handy dandy. So what I think I'm going to end up doing is cutting out the panel for the HVAC controls down there, and then getting a bigger radio that'll take up both panel spots with like a HD plasma screen, you know, all the doodads and gadgets. I feel like I've said doodads one too many times in this video. Well, I think I'm probably running out of time on this here video, probably losing all your interest anyway. So if you want to continue to watch the world's sick nastiest and yet cheap daily driver / race car combo, which is semi-unachievable, then subscribe. Maybe check out the playlist. There'll be part 2 or 4 or whatever this is. I don't know. Don't even know my own name anymore. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.